Ready? Hello, this is Mrs. Dunn, and I'm going to read the March Book of the Month, The Keeping Quilt by Patricia Polacco. As I read, please keep in mind the character trait for the month of March, which is patience. The Keeping Quilt by Patricia Polacco. When my great-grandma Anna came to America, she wore the same thick overcoat and big boots she had worn for farm work. But her family weren't dirt farmers anymore. In New York City, her father's work was hauling things in a wagon, and the rest of the family made artificial flowers all day. Everyone was in a hurry, and it was so crowded, not like back home in Russia. But all the same, it was their home, and most of the neighbors were just like them. When Anna went to school, English sounded to her like pebbles dropping into shallow water. Shh. In 6 months, she was speaking English. Her parents almost never learned, so she spoke English for them too. The only things that she had left from back home, Russia, were her dress and the babushka that she had thrown up into the air when she was dancing. And her dress was getting too small too. After her mother had sewn her a new one, she took her old dress and babushka. Then, from a basket of old clothes, she took Uncle Vladimir's shirt, Aunt Heleva's nightdress, and an apron of Aunt Natasha's. "We will make a quilt to help us remember home," Anna's mother said. "It will be like having the family in back home Russia dance around at night." And so it was. Anna's mother invited all the neighborhood ladies to cut out animals and flowers from scraps of clothing, and Anna kept the needles threaded and handed them to the ladies as they needed them. The border of the quilt was made of Anna's babushka. On Friday nights, Anna's mother would say the prayers that started the Sabbath. The family ate challah and chicken soup. The quilt was the tablecloth. Anna grew up and she fell in love with great-grandpa Sasha. To show that he wanted to be her husband, he gave Anna a gold coin, a dried flower, and a piece of rock salt, and tied them into a linen handkerchief. The gold was for wealth, the flower for love, and the salt so that their lives would always have flavor. She accepted the hanky, and they were engaged. Under the wedding chuppah, Anna and Sasha promised each other love and understanding. After the wedding, the men and women celebrated separately. When my grandma Carly was born, Anna wrapped her daughter in a quilt to welcome her warmly into the world. Carly was given a gift of gold flour, salt, and bread. Gold so that she would never know poverty. A flower so that she would always know love. Salt so that her life would always have flavor, and bread so she would never know hunger. Carly learned to keep the Sabbath and cook and clean and do washing. "Married someday you'll be," Anna told Carly, and again the quilt became a wedding chuppah, and this time for Carly's wedding to Grandpa George. Men and women celebrated together, but they still did not dance together. In Carly's wedding bouquet, there was gold coin, bread, and salt. Carly and George moved to a farm in Michigan, and great-grandma Anna came to live with them. The quilt once again wrapped a new little girl, Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen called Anna Lady Grandma, and she had grown very old and was sick a lot of the time, and the quilt kept her legs warm. On Anna's 98th birthday, the cake was kulush, a rich cake with raisins and candied fruit in it. When Great-Grandma Anna died, prayers were said to lift her soul to heaven. My mother, Mary Ellen, was now grown up. When Mary Ellen left home, she took the quilt with her. When she became a bride, the quilt became her chuppah. For the first time, friends who were not Jews came to the wedding. My mother wore a suit, but in her bouquet were gold, bread, and salt. The quilt welcomed me, Patricia, into the world, and it was the tablecloth for my first birthday party. At night, I would trace my fingers around the edges of each animal on the quilt before I went to sleep. I told my mother stories about the animals on the quilt, and she told me whose sleeve made the horse, whose apron made the chicken, and whose dress made the flowers, and whose babushka went around the edge of the quilt. The quilt was a pretend cape when I was in the bullfight, or sometimes a tent in the streaming Amazon jungle. My wedding to Enzo Mario, men and women danced together. In my bouquet were gold, bread, and salt, and a sprinkle of wine, so I would always know laughter. 20 years ago, I held Tracy Denise in the quilt for the first time. Someday she too will leave home, and she will take the quilt with her. Now that you've heard the book, please talk with your classmates about how this book shows the March character trait of patience.